The Jesse Blake Sports Report with Jesse Blake.
The MLB trade deadline is in full swing, and the Toronto Blue Jays have started their fire sale after a very disappointing 2024 season, a season in which expectations were high, playoffs were the goal, winning a couple rounds was the bar, and the Blue Jays are going to fall well short of all of that, sitting right now last in the American League East. And I protested hard throughout this entire season as things dwindled away and the hopes of winning dwindled away. I didn't think Ross Atkins should have been in charge of conducting this retool because the Jays are trying to retool for 2025. That is the goal here, to be competitive next season. So they're getting rid of a bunch of players. In the last 24 hours, they've traded 3 players off their roster. And I've been protesting that Ross Atkins shouldn't be in charge of the retool because he's the reason we are in this situation with this collection of talent that is very underperforming. So you bring in somebody new within the organization, maybe somebody who's already there, and allow them to retool for next year. But Mark Shapiro, his boss, and the bosses above him, ownership level, believe that Ross Atkins is the man for this job and this retool for 2025. So here we are. Here we are at the trade deadline where the Blue Jays have a couple days remaining. It is July 27th as of this recording. So they have a couple days remaining up until the 31st trade deadline of July. But in the last 24 hours, as I said, they've traded away 3 players, and one just broke, one trade. So we'll get to that one last. Let's go in chronological order. The first move that happened on a Friday evening. The Blue Jays traded Yimi Garcia to the Seattle Mariners for Jonathan Clase and Jacob Sharp, 2 prospects. And you'll notice the theme in all of these 3 deals. The Blue Jays got back prospects. And moving Yimi Garcia to the Seattle Mariners is exactly what the Mariners needed. Yimi Garcia is having one of the best season. I think a lot of people would agree, the best season of his career right now. And the Mariners need middle relief help. They have great starting pitching, but their middle relief needs some bolstering up. And Garcia is exactly that guy. He's the relief pitcher who's going to help any bullpen because he's going to put up solid numbers. He's going to get outs for any playoff team. So Seattle, they go and acquire him. And what they give up is Clase and Sharp. And Clase is very interesting because he's not really great at hitting. He's not really great in the field. But what he has is, the baseball nerds will describe it as A++ speed. And speed never takes a day off. Speed is so intriguing, whether it's in the field or around the bases. He has both. And when you have speed, you can kind of teach the other things. The intriguing thing about Clase is that he may play for the Jays this season because he's already played a little bit for the Mariners. And when he was up with the Mariners, the hitting was atrocious. He struck out a whole bunch. But at the age of 22, the Mariners, who are a contending team, thought it was at a point where they could try him out at the major league level. And I could see the Blue Jays doing that with the season dwindling away and it meaning nothing coming down to August and September. I can see Jonathan getting some at-bats at the major league level, and we can see how that goes, which is fun because that's the idea with these trades, is to get help in the near future. And if Class A speed is, like we said, elite plus, A++ speed, and the hitting is somewhat decent, there is a utility option for next season, possibly for the Toronto Blue Jays. In terms of Jacob Sharp, he was drafted by the Mariners in the 17th round of the 2023 MLB draft. That was last season. A 22-year-old drafted last season is going to take some time. He is a project. A 17th round pick is going to take some time to cook, but he does have good amateur numbers and good minor league numbers in terms of home runs. 14 home runs in 42 games, 12 in 46, and then 6 home runs, 29 RBIs in 44 games at high A ball. The other numbers were amateur numbers. This is at high A ball, 6 home runs, 29 RBIs. So you have potential for Jacob Sharp to turn into a decent hitting catcher, maybe one day well along the lines. Trade number 2, which happened around lunchtime on Saturday, the Toronto Blue Jays moved Nate Pearson to the Chicago Cubs in exchange for Yohendrick Pingano and Josh Rivera. Pingano is a outfielder. Rivera is an infielder. And Nate Pearson, at one point in our lifetimes, was a top 25 prospect in Major League Baseball, was touted as the next ace for the Toronto Blue Jays one day down the line. He had a really good 2020 season. He helped that playoff team do some good stuff. And Nate Pearson hasn't panned out as that ace, like, for sure. I think we can all rule out that possibility right now, even though the Cubs are kind of taking a bet that he can be useful as a reliever for them. But Nate Pearson, his fastball, 98 miles an hour. When it was on, it struck out a lot of batters. It was a lot of swing and misses, but Nate Pearson's fastball has not been it as of late, and he's getting hit hard. When you're throwing 98, you're either getting hit hard or guys are missing. And right now, a lot of batters are making a lot of contact on Nate Pearson's fastball, and it has not been effective. The slider, on the other hand, has looked a lot better this season. The slider has been getting a lot of outs, but his bread and butter is that fastball. And then the slider, when it's also not working, there's not much good happening with Nate Pearson in his pitching. And what the Blue Jays are saying here is they weren't going to tender Pearson's contract this offseason. They have 2 more years of control. So the Cubs, right now that they have Nate Pearson, will get 2 more years of control for Pearson. And the Blue Jays probably would have non-tendered him, making him a free agent and allowing him to walk. So for Nate Pearson, instead of just non-tendering him and letting him go, the Blue Jays get, in exchange for a guy who didn't pan out, they get Yohendrick Pingano and Josh Rivera. I'll read from Ben Nicholson Smith on Twitter from Sportsnet, who writes this about Pingano. He's a left-handed hitting outfielder with 9 home runs, a 797 OPS in the minors. Now 22, he got to Double-A this year after 4 stints at High A, described as a possible 4th outfielder. And I will read from Jim Bowden of CBS Sports about Josh Rivera, and he says, 23 years old, 3rd round pick in 2023, hitting 169. Ooh, not great. In Double-A in 68 games. I added the not great. That is my own commentary, not Bowden's tweet. At University of Florida in 2023, he hit 348 with 19 home runs, 72 RBIs, and 18 stolen bases. I think it's very fascinating with Rivera there. Great numbers at the University of Florida, and then when he hits Double-A, he's fallen off of a cliff. But he's a prospect. Obviously, it's a pick from last season. There's a lot of room to cook and for him to develop, and it's kind of there. There's a reason he was drafted. It's for that potential, and that's all it is right now. For Nate Pearson, the Blue Jays were never going to get a lot because of his status as a failed ace, as a failed top prospect for the Blue Jays. Pearson was never going to get a haul, and what they got back here are 2 possible magic beans. You're upgrading the age curve on the players you have in your system. Nate Pearson wasn't going to be effective for the Jays next season and moving forward. So what you do is you swap that body that was going to move on for 2 younger pieces that are, fingers crossed, hopefully something in a couple of years. So there's 2 more prospects that have entered the Blue Jay system, and baseball is a game of numbers. And what you want to do is just collect prospects, and your fingers are crossed that hopefully enough of them pan out. And that's what they're doing with these 2 trades here. They've got 4 prospects in exchange for 2 guys who are going to move on this season. So that's decent work. You'd want more upside right now from the guys they're collecting, but you were never going to get a lot for Nate Pearson. And moving on to trade number 3, which broke just before I started recording here. Danny Jansen moving to the Boston Red Sox in exchange for 3 prospects. And we will get to those 3 prospects shortly, but a second on Danny Jansen. Danny Jansen was the longest tenured Blue Jay until this trade. Now it is Vladimir Guerrero Jr., but Danny Jansen was with the Toronto Blue Jays ever since he got drafted in 2013 by the Jays. And then he spent 7 major league seasons with the Jays, but his entire career so far in the Toronto Blue Jays organization. It is sad to see him go. He's been a fan favorite throughout the years with the Toronto Blue Jays, and he's been here through everything. Like, he's been here through all of the ups and downs over the last 7 major league seasons. And it's sad to see him go, but it's a necessary evil for somebody who is a free agent at the end of the year. If they want to bring back Danny Jansen, they can, but most likely Danny Jansen signs somewhere else this offseason, and it'd be unforgivable to not get something, at least in exchange for Jansen, in a season where you're not playing for anything down the stretch. I've said that a million times on this podcast. And Danny Jansen is going to be very useful for the Boston Red Sox. He'll be their 1B catcher platooning, just as he platooned with Alejandro Kirk here in Toronto. But Danny Jansen can catch a great game for any pitcher that he's working with. He was a -2 defensive runs above replacement this season, but last season he was a +5 in defensive runs above replacement, which is really good. So they're getting some good defense out of Jansen. And the beginning of this season, in terms of hitting, like Danny Jansen was hitting at an unbelievable rate this season. And so far in the summer months, he's kind of fallen by the wayside, but I'm sure in a big postseason hunt and being reinvigorated as a Red Sox, that hitting will pick back up for Danny Jansen. So it's sad to see him go, but is a necessary evil. And in exchange for Danny Jansen, the Toronto Blue Jays acquire infielder Cutter Coffee, infielder Edison Paulino, and right-handed pitcher Gilberto Batista. And I'll start with Batista. Batista is 19. If anybody says they got any kind of scouting report on Batista, they are lying, or they are an MLB or minor league scout, and that is their job. Batista is 19, has barely done anything at any kind of high level of baseball, so he is a prospect in all of the sense of the word. Cutter Coffee, however, has done some things. There was a point where he's playing high A ball. Cutter Coffee had 7 home runs in 6 games. So there's a bat in Cutter Coffee, and looking at some of his numbers, he's 20 years old, and there's another still really big prospects, but he's 14 home runs, 46 RBIs. His slash lines are 238, 321, and a 463, and that's in 61 games at high A this season. So they are getting a really decent prospect in Cutter Coffee, not one of the higher end prospects in the Red Sox system, but a very decent hitting prospect in infielder Cutter Coffee. And then infielder Edison Paulino, he has been lauded for his defense is so far in his minor league career. He will hopefully be a useful infielder for the Toronto Blue Jays, but only 21 years old. As with all of these prospects we've talked about, very young. The Blue Jays are trying to replenish their minor league system that lacks depth. He's playing in Double-A right now. Looking at some of his numbers here, RBIs 35 on the year in 243 at-bats, 69 games. That's nice. 3 home runs so far this season. Last season at high A, in terms of stolen bases, 26 stolen bases, 10 so far this year. So some speed on the base paths there, hitting 263 batting average, a 740 OPS, that's a 349 on base percentage. I don't hate Edison Paulino's numbers at all. I think I'm pretty lukewarm on the returns in these 3 trades. And it's because there's clearly a goal here. Everyone that the Blue Jays acquired is 22 or younger. And it's not about acquiring in these 3 trades pieces that are helping immediately. It's not what these trades are there to do. This is replenishing the barren prospect pool that the Blue Jays have right now. They don't have a bunch of guys coming up and filling the slots. And this is a long-term play by the front office now to get just numbers, get a bunch of different guys who may one day pan out to be something. And I don't hate that strategy, because that is also an important strategy of building a healthy organization. It's acquiring prospects that may one day be something. And the more prospects you have, the better chances that you get good prospects. So I'm not upset with the accumulation of prospects here. I'm a little disappointed that we didn't have the guy who's sitting in the top 25 on the ESPN's prospect or MLB's list of top 25 prospects. We didn't grab that player, but I don't think Danny Jansen or Yimi Garcia or Nate Pearson are getting that. I don't think that's what we're getting in exchange for those guys. Yusei Kikuchi, on the other hand, probably expects a little more than this. And that's the thing with these Blue Jays trades that are going to happen over the next few days. There are so many to come that it's going to be an evaluation of the total package and not really each individual trade. It's going to be a total, what's the haul out of trade deadline 2024 that's going to be useful for this organization moving forward. And that haul is not complete yet, is not in the back of the truck just yet. So I'm looking forward to more of this from the Jays. I think getting 3 and then 2, that's 5, and then 2 more, 7 prospects for 3 guys that are no longer useful for your organization. Not too bad. Not too bad. Let me know what you think in the comments below, wherever you interact with the show. Let me know what you think about this 7-player haul that the Blue Jays have in the last 24 hours in terms of just sheer number of 22, 21, 20, and 19-year-old prospects that the Blue Jays are accumulating for their organization. Let me know. That is it for me right now, unless more trades break, because it has been a heavy day in baseball trade deadline land. It seems like everybody wants to do their business today. So we'll keep an eye on all of that moving forward, and I will see you again very shortly. That is it. Don't forget to hit subscribe on the Jesse Blake Sports Report YouTube channel. If you're watching on the YouTube, hit subscribe or like the video right now. I appreciate that. That's it. Good night from Toronto.
And that is how it's done.
The Jesse Blake Sports Report with Jesse Blake.
Jesse Blake, the guy that likes to hear his name twice in one sentence. Sure, I know him. No, he doesn't have an ego at all.